Good day, everyone. Good evening. This Dvar Torah on the Parsha is sponsored by Elaine Pomerantz in memory of her mother. It's the Yortzeit, and the Neshama should have an Aliyah. And I appreciate Elaine's friendship and generosity throughout the years. The central figure in the Parsha is naturally Avraham Avinu. And we learn in the Mishnah, in Avot, that Asar Nisyonos Nisnasa Avraham Avinu v'Amad Bekulam. That Avraham Avinu was tested with 10 different situations, and he emerged greater after each one. Now, throughout the ages, the commentators have struggled to try and identify which are the 10. And as can readily be understood, there certainly is no unanimity in this. In fact, if you add up what everybody says, you have far more than 10. And there is a subtle lesson in that. And the lesson that I want to concentrate on is that all of life is an Nisayon. It's not just individual situations that arise, but that all of life, all of our everyday choices, options, everything is an Nisayon. Somebody says something to me, how do I respond to that? That's a Nisayon. And we don't think of that as a Nisayon because that's everyday life. So we think a Nisayon is a great thing. Tempted, somebody left the cash register open, there are no cameras, I can walk away with money. Oh, that's a Nisayon. But the truth of the matter is, as I mentioned, all of life is an Nisayon. Every day we have these choices. Every day we are tested. And the question is, V'yomad bekulam, are we able to come out greater, enhanced, better people? That's not an easy answer. Avraham Avinu is alone in the world. That's a great Nisayon. It's hard enough to be alone in terms of family, in terms of not having a spouse. That's a very difficult Nisayon. One has to be alone. But nevertheless, one has acquaintances, one has friends, one has a society. If we're fortunate enough, one has a synagogue. So even though the person is alone, the person is not really alone. Because there are other people who care about the person, and there are other people who share the values and outlook and faith, and therefore, so to speak, one is not alone. One is part of a group, one is part of a nation, one is part of a history, not alone. Avraham Avinu is alone. Lama Nikra Shmo Avraham Ivri. Why is he called Ivri? V'chol ha'olam kulo me'ever acher. Because he's on one side and the rest of the world is on the other side. He has no allies. We're talking at the beginning. He has no allies. He has no people that agree with him. He's an outlaw. He's been condemned to death. And really, he has no parents. Terach is not the ideal father. Terach, in fact, is the merchant who sells statues and idols and icons. We all know the famous medrash from the time we were children that Avraham Avinu, as a child, broke all of them. And then when Terach complained, he said, well, the big one broke the little ones. He said, so Terach said, the big one can't do anything. He said, then why do you worship him? So he has no father, really, because everything that he stands for and everything that he does is against his ancestral heritage. It's against where he's coming from. The Gemara tells us the name of his mother. That's your assignment for next week. Find out the name of Avraham Avinu's mother. I remember when I was, as a Rav, there was a man that came to shul. So whenever a guest rabbi came to shul, he would ask him only one question. What was the name of Avraham Avinu's mother? Well, 90% of them didn't know it offhand. It's not, I wouldn't say it's trivia, but it's, it's not like knowing a Rambam or Tosfos. And therefore, he would say, you see, these rabbis, they don't know anything. So needless to say, I looked it up. But he has no father, he has no mother. His brother was killed by Nimrod, and his brother was wishy-washy, wasn't on the side of Avraham Avinu. Horon said, we'll see what happens. If Avraham Avinu is able to escape from the fire, then I'm a monotheist. But if he's not able to escape from the fire, then I'm with Nimrod. That doesn't guarantee any faith or stature or legacy. So he's alone. There's no greater Nisoyim than that. Meaning the only one in the world. The Novi says, Ki echad krosiv. I called him one. That's all he is at one. We know there is a herd mentality. We don't want to be one. Not only that, when the majority is against us, so even though there are those who are with us, we are reluctant to expose ourselves to criticism, and therefore we keep quiet. We don't push the matter. So that's the first, and that's not the Nisoyim that's mentioned by any of them Meforshim for the 10 Nisyonos of Avraham Avinu. But that's a great Nisoyim, a great test, a great challenge to be able to be alone. And Maaseh Avos Siman Labonim, the Torah wants us to understand from that this is the lot of the Jewish people throughout all of our history. We are always the naysayer. We are the ones that always say everybody else is wrong. So there can be a billion people that believe in X, Y, or Z, and another billion people that believe in A, B, and C. And we're a handful of people, and we say it's all nonsense. We don't believe in it. We're alone. And we know how alone we are, because God forbid if we ever are in trouble, we realize, or we should realize, Ein lanu al mi lihishoin ela avinu shabashamayim. We really have no allies to rely upon except for God. And that's the whole story of the Jewish people. Avraham Avinu survives as being the lonely one. The Jewish people survive as being the lonely one. So we're different. And in a world that finds it difficult to accept that can be dangerous. We see that throughout Jewish history. Paro in Mitzrayim, Haman, Yeshno Am Echad, Mefozor, Mefor bin Agoyim, V'dosei HaMelech Einam Osim. Strange people. That was what Hitler said, what Stalin said, what everyone who has tried to destroy us says. So that's a major nisoyim. That's a major nisoyim. And therefore, throughout Jewish history, we see that there have been sections of the Jewish people that fail on that nisoyim. In the words that the Navi Yechezkel quotes, K'chol hagoyim beis Yisrael. We're like everyone else. We're not special. We're not different. We're not on one side of the river and everybody else on the other side. We crossed that river a long time ago. We're just like everyone else. And that nisoyon remains with us throughout all of the generations and stands with us currently as well. Are we willing to be alone? Are we willing to be different? Or are we willing to, so to speak, sell out everything in order to look like we're being accepted, even though rarely in our history have we ever been able to really be accepted? So that's one idea of Avraham Avinu, very basic idea. How to remain alone. Just as an aside, this past, originally, when the Marxists first came to Eretz Israel and made kibbutzim, Marxist Jews, so on the Passover night, on the Seder night, instead of reading the Haggadah, traditionally, they read excerpts from Marx and Engels. And they had 4 questions. They imitated the Haggadah with this communist theology. I mean, today it doesn't exist anymore, Baruch Hashem. Today it's almost a laughing stock, but it's not a laughing stock, because I want to point out to you that last Rosh Hashanah, in a number of Reform temples in the United States, so the Jewish justice from the Supreme Court, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, had died just before Rosh Hashanah. So in certain Reform temples, instead of having the Haftorah of Chana and of the Novi Shmuel, they read decisions of Ruth Bader Ginsburg to the melody of the Haftorah, and they thought that was the greatest, because that shows how woke we are. It shows how we're really with it. But that's not Avraham Avinu. I don't know what travesty that is, but that's not Avraham Avinu. All right, so that's one thing that we have to, when we speak about tests and challenges, the test and challenge of being alone and different, which is a major one. A second challenge, which also is major, but it's subtle, is how do we deal with the rest of the world? Can't be ignored. We see that Avraham Avinu gets involved in a war. The war originally had nothing to do with him, but when Lot, his nephew, is captured and taken into captivity, so then he has to go to war. So he appears as a warrior. Now, people who appear as a warrior are not popular with those whom they war against. Napoleon is very popular in France even till today, but he's much less so in England. Yeah, there, Wellington is popular. If you declare yourself as a warrior, you engage in war, so then undoubtedly, if you win, it means that somebody else lost. So how do you deal with that? Especially if you're trying, as Avraham Avinu is trying, to promote the idea of monotheism in the world, to influence the idol worshippers, to try and influence Dome. So that's one piece of the puzzle. Avraham Avinu is a warrior. Then there's another piece of the puzzle. God tells him, I'm going to destroy his dome. So what if God told us, I'm going to destroy an arch enemy? I'm going to eliminate the Iranians, let us say. So I imagine that many, if not most of us, would say, go right ahead. They earned it. They're evil people. Ba'avod rishoyim rina. When evil people are destroyed, that's a benefit. It's a melody to the world. It's a positive thing. So when God tells Avraham Avinu, I'm going to destroy his dome, as we will see in this week and next week's Parshas, Avraham Avinu says, no. Hashofet kol haaretz lo yaseh mishpat. What do you mean you're going to destroy his dome? Not right. Ulai, maybe there are 50 good people in there in town. Now, this dome has got millions. 50 people, well, okay. So God says, so to speak, okay, if I give you 50, 45, 40, 30, 20, 10. So that's another piece of the puzzle. Avraham Avinu as the defender of humanity, even of corrupt, evil humanity. Ki b'tzelem Elohim boros odom. They're godly creatures. Let's give them a chance. Don't destroy them. So they have the warrior piece and you have the stone piece. And then you have Avraham Avinu with the challenge of his family. Yes, most difficult challenge, I think, imaginable. He has a son, Yishmael. He loves him. He undoubtedly invested in him whatever he could. He gave him whatever education he could. He tried to inspire him to be a good person. And it ends up, V'hu yeh pere odom. He's a wild animal. Yoda bakol v'yad kol bo. He's aggressive with everyone, and everyone is aggressive with him. Val pnei kol echov nofal. And he is out to destroy everybody. Yishmael. Can there be any greater disappointment than that? Doesn't Avraham Avinu think of himself as a failure? How does he deal with that? And he has other children, the Bnei Apelakshim. He gives them gifts and he sends them away. That they shouldn't have anything to do with Yitzchak and they shouldn't have anything to do with him. He would have to be made of steel and iron and not to have regrets and emotion regarding these events. And the disappointment in Lot. V'gam lelot aholeches Avraham. Lot is an orphan. Avraham and Sarah raise him. They take him down to Egypt. He becomes very wealthy there because of Avraham. He repays it with ingratitude. He can't live together with Avraham. He says it's too expensive. You know, there are too many people that come to collect money. I'm bothered. I don't want any of that. I want to leave. And he goes to Sodom. It's one thing to leave. But it says, Vayel ad Sodom. He took his tent all the way to Sodom. And in Sodom, people will say, look, Avraham Avinu's nephew, right? So is there any greater desecration, so to speak, of the name of Avraham than that? So these are enormous tests. All of these pieces of the puzzle. And we'll have in a few weeks that when Sarah passes away and he wants to bury her, and the Ribono Shel Olam told him, it's all yours, Avraham. From Metula to Eilat. More than that. He wants to buy a plot for a cemetery, and they can't do it. And he ends up paying an exorbitant price to the Bnei Ches. So isn't that a challenge? This is as great a challenge as anything that any of the 10 that we would list. And Avraham Avinu not shaken by any of this. The Chazal say that Avraham Avinu had vision. He saw it from far away. Not many people are blessed with vision. There are people that have, Baruch Hashem, good eyesight. There are people who have declining eyesight. But vision is a different matter. Vision is being able to see beyond events, circumstances, disappointments. That's why prophecy is called chazon. Chazon is vision, to be able to see far. And that was a trait of the Jewish people always, that they were blessed with vision. The whole reason that we're here in Eretz Yisrael today is because of that vision. In the darkest days of the Middle Ages, you're going to tell them the Jews are going to be in Eretz Yisrael. 150 years ago, you tell them the Jews are going to be in Eretz Yisrael. Avraham Avinu, he sees it. He sees it. To him, it's reality. And he demands to know the signs and the signals that will make it clear that he will inherit Eretz Yisrael. So Avraham Avinu says, the famous medrash regarding the Akedah, that he asked Eliezer and Yishmael, Moatem Roim, what do you see anything? They're looking for Yerushalayim, for Hara Moriah. Can you identify it? Do you see anything? And they say, no, Klum Roim, we don't see anything. And that's why he said, Amadom el Chamor, you're like a dumb animal. The Chamor doesn't see far, it only sees the blades of grass in front of it that it wants to eat. It has no sense of vision, of a future. But Yitzhak and I, we see that there's Onon Kosher Alahor. So there's a mountain and there's a cloud and it's special and it's going to be something there. It'll take 1,000 years. So what? Hayad Hashem Tiktzor. Will God be unable to facilitate it and bring it to being? Certainly not. And that's why it says, Avraham Avinu v'hamin b'Hashem. Avraham Avinu believed. Not only that he believed that it was going to happen, he believed to such an extent that he saw it happen, even though it would have happened long after he's gone. Chazal say we read it on Simchas Torah that God showed Moshe Vayarehu Hashem, the Ribono Shalom showed Moshe Ad Hayom Ha'acharon, Eretz Yisrael, and to the end of the last sea, meaning the Mediterranean. But the Gemara Darshans don't say Yom, but say Yom. Ad Hayom Ha'acharon. Moshe saw us. He saw what would happen to the last day. That's what makes him Moshe Rabbeinu. That's why he's the Av Kol HaNeviim. Because of the fact that he had that sense of vision. So that is our legacy from Avraham Avinu. That's what he left us with. He left us with the ability to be alone. He left us with the ability to be different, to overcome everything, and to absorb all of the disappointments that life has in store for all of us. Family disappointments, bitter family disappointments, and to be able to continue. I often had that feeling. I knew a lot of good Jews in Chicago when I grew up. Many of them no longer have Jewish descendants. Now I'm talking about people who were Rabbonim, people that were Talmidei Chachomim, and people that were active leaders of the community, people who stood on the street corners with a pushka to collect money for Eretz Yisrael when the state of Israel was just yet still only a goal. And they have great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren that are not even Jewish anymore. And what happened? How do we deal with that? And that's why the Torah told us all of these stories about Avraham Avinu. Because if we look it over, he certainly did not have an easy life. Nothing went the way he wanted it to go. That was the challenge. That's the Asor Nisyonos Nisnas Avraham Avinu. Those are the tests that he was tested with. It should be one way and it never is. It should work out and it never does. How do we rise above that? So that's why the Torah says, "V'hamin b'Hashem v'yachshaveh lo tzedakah." The Kotzker had a famous quip. Sisro Yosher. What's hidden from us, the world, is somehow straight, but we don't see it. Atzoso, what's the Eitzah? Emunah. And that's not necessarily easy to acquire, but every shred of faith that we have is something that a person should work on to retain. Because a little faith grows. It's only when there is nothing left, God forbid, that all the destruction comes into life. So these lessons from Avraham Avinu, v'omad bekulam, he overcame them all. So we will also overcome them all. We also will stand up. And the fact that we are confronted by current crises, by difficulties. But meanwhile, the Ribono Shel Olam is doing great things for us that we hardly notice and take into account. Enemies now want to become allies. And while people are out on the street hollering for what I don't know exactly what causes, the Ribono Shel Olam is doing his. And that's the idea of Vehemin B'Hashem Vayachshaveh Lo Tzedakah. Vehemin B'Hashem, I believe that God will do things for us. It's not I believe in God. I believe that the promises that he made, the covenant, he'll take care of it. Somehow it'll all come right. Somehow we'll all be able to understand better how events occur and why they occur. And we'll be able to rise above all of our difficulties and problems. And because of that, therefore, we'll be privileged to be the children of Avraham and Sarah. Not only biologically and genetically, but spiritually and idealistically as well. And that is an important nisayon that all of us should strive to overcome and achieve, because that is the basis of our legacy and eternity. So I want to thank you all for listening here this evening. Saturday night, we have a lecture on Volozhin, the yeshiva as I knew it through my grandfather. I like the series that I'm going to do. I hope you do as well. I really was enthusiastic about being able to do this. So that would be Saturday night. In order to get the link, just contact Nochum Amsel, Nochum at jewishdestiny.com, Nochum at jewishdestiny.com. Thank you all. Be blessed and be well. Kol Tuv Selah.